Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. It's about transcranial photobiomodulation for autism, ADHD, and other neurodevelopmental disorders with my guest, Dr. Josh Madsen. I am Maria Rickard Hong. I'm a co-founder and the education and media director for Documenting Hope and your host. And if you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we're going to be taking questions at the end. I know a lot of you have already sent in your questions, so I'll be getting to those in a little bit as well. For those of you who don't know about us, Documenting Hope is a 501c3 nonprofit that provides root cause healing solutions for children's chronic health and developmental conditions. We provide resources and support for parents and practitioners who are ready to move beyond the conventional symptom suppressive approach to disease management and to instead use a root cause approach. You can find out more about us at our website, documentinghope.com. And we invite you to join us inside our Healing Together membership program, where we have an uncensored private forum. We have monthly house calls with Doctors Medea Saeed and Heather Tallman-Room. And we also have a monthly community Q&A call where you can get all of your questions answered. And we have our healing trail map that shows you how to heal. If your child has any kind of chronic health condition, this will help. You can find more about that at healing.documentinghope.com/register. And just a quick disclaimer about our webinar. This webinar is not a substitute for medical advice, treatment, diagnosis, or consultation with a medical professional. It is intended for general informational purposes only and should not be relied upon to make determinations related to treatment of a medical condition. Documenting Hope has not verified and does not guarantee the accuracy of the information provided in this webinar. So today my guest is Dr. Josh Madsen. He is a functional neurology expert and founder of Infinity Neuromotor Developmental Center. You can find out more about him at his website, which is Dr. Josh Madsen, that's Madsen with an E.com, and his podcast is Unraveling the Brain with Dr. Josh Madsen. So hello, Dr. Madsen. Welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys having me. And another resource that's really helpful for people is just on my Instagram page. If you just look me up on Instagram, man, we put so many videos out there as well. So if anyone else wants to dig in deeper, that's another good spot.
And what's your Instagram account?
Just Dr. Josh Madsen.
Okay. Dr. Josh Madsen.
Yep.
Okay. Great. So I always ask people, tell us how you got into doing what you're doing. Why are you so passionate about it?
When I was younger, I had a lot of learning issues. I had a lot of reading issues. I still read at the speed of like a fourth grader. Like my speed is not efficient. But a lot of the reasons for that, come to find out now as I've learned neurology and I've learned all these underlying issues, was that I had a lot of retained reflexes. I had eye tracking issues. I had convergence issues. I had a lot of foundational pieces that if they would have been taken care of when I was younger, my brain would have changed, neuroplastic things would have changed, and that would have made life a lot easier. So that's why I became passionate about helping kids in the first place. And then as I started learning a lot of neurology and I started learning a lot about functional medicine and a lot of these metabolic dysfunctions that are happening in kids that specifically have autism or really severe ADHD, I became passionate about it because I found that there was a really big deficit in how these kids were treated. Most of them would come to me and they'd never even had basic labs ran. Like they have one of the most severe neurological diagnoses that you can have, and they've had no labs, they've had no MRIs, they've had literally nothing ran. And it kind of started to blow my mind of how there was just a massive lack of care for them.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me really interested in working with this population a little bit more. And, probably half of our patients right now are autism, nonverbal autism, of the majority of those. The other half is traumatic brain injuries, CP, and then learning disabilities would be another one as well. So probably 25% of each of those and 50% autism.
Okay.
And we've been able to help a lot of those kids in ways that they just have not been able to get help before. And we've just basically dug through all the research as much as I could. I'm continually learning. I'm just a continual learner. And I started finding all these mechanisms that were going on. And then I started looking for therapeutic interventions that could address some of these underlying mechanisms, which we're going to talk about today. And that's really where things started clicking together for me, and that passion really kind of started to take off, is because we know a lot of the underlying mechanisms that are going on, and there is a lot of strategies out there to address those or improve those functions, and they're just not being used, which is wild. And there's a lot of research behind them too.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're doing what we're doing, which is sort of finding our own way to get the word out to people.
Yep.
There's a lot of there are a lot of therapies, a lot of supports, a lot of interventions that can be done. It's just that you take your child to a pediatrician and they're like, well, I don't know, go
Yeah.
see an ABA therapist or an occupational
Yep.
therapist or an SLP or a physical therapist, and that's about all you will get from
Yeah.
mainstream medicine.
Yep. And it's just, oh, they just have autism. Go do speech OT, ABA, and
Yeah.
and like even in itself, just it should never be diagnosed with just autism. It should be autism due to, like, why do we have autism? Was there there an injury? Was there a chemical or toxic exposure? Was there, like, why is it there in the first place?
Mhm.
Like, why did this happen in the first place? And for every person, that story is going to look different in a lot of cases, and there's obviously similarities, but I think that the bigger question is asking why, and that never happens in your traditional model.
Right. Or traditional mainstream
Yeah.
media.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. 100%.
It's all genetic. Right.
Yeah.
But I will say the New York Times actually admitted in an article, it was last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before that. And they admitted that genetics only accounts for 25 to 30% of the diagnosis. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Because everybody's
Yeah.
always been saying in the mainstream media, it's all genetic. And where has
Yep.
that gotten us?
Yeah.
So,
Definitely not the case. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we are here to talk about photobiomodulation, otherwise known as PBM. It's easier to say it that way. So
yep.
maybe you can explain to our listeners what that is.
I sure can. Do you want me to jump into a presentation? Or you want me just to explain stuff back
Do
and forth here?
do what you want. Yeah.
All
If you have
right.
a presentation, let me know if you can't share your screen and I'll,
Yeah. Oh, yep. I need to
yes, I will
send a
allow.
request there.
Oh,
Perfect. Dun, dun. Okay. Let me move this so it's in front of me here. You guys still see my photobiomodulation one, or is it a triangle?
it's a pyramid, a triangle, cognition, ocular. There you go.
Okay, let me go back here. Oh, that's not what I want. Okay, I think I got it now.
It's showing.
Okay, so like you said, I own Infinity Neuromotor Development Centers. We're a multidisciplinary clinic. Chiros, OTs, SLPs. We have three different locations. Our main one's in Iowa. We have a one in Minnesota that has SLPs in it. The one in Iowa has Chiros and OTs. And then Denver has Chiros and OTs as well. So we have a few different clinics that work with these kids and all work under the same methodologies, which I'll talk about a bit as well. Primarily 97, probably more now, pediatrics. The majority of our patients come from out of the state or out of the country to work with us. And we really, really focus on motor development for brain development.
Mm.
And that's really the key for us for, like when we look at autism, 79% of them actually fit the diagnostic criteria for developmental coordination disorder. So their movement is impaired. Another 10% of them are subclinical, but they still have motor impairments. And what we found over and over and over again is if we can work through motor development, we can start making changes in all aspects of function. And a big piece of that is getting energy to their brain before we start working on those things. Because so many times parents come to us that they've been working on primitive reflexes, which we can talk about that too. It's one of my favorite topics, but they've been working on primitive reflexes for years and made no changes. And the mechanism for that is because the child's brain isn't producing enough energy for it to function well enough to inhibit those reflexes. And I'm going to talk to you about how photobiomodulation plays into that. And if any of you guys have seen our stuff, we use lasers constantly to get more energy to the brain and address some of these other mechanisms. But we use a mixture of chiropractic, OT, funk neuro, functional neurology, functional medicine, low-level light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapies, and a few other ones as well to start making changes for kids. So, what is photobiomodulation? Really, really simple. Photobiomodulation is so modulation is making change to biology through photons. So, modulation, make change, biology, photons. So, using light to change physiology. Um, and that's the simplest term is what it does. But what happened was in 1967, this guy, last name Mester, he was developed the first laser, and he was laser in mice, and he found that their hair grew faster. So he actually thought he found a solution for loss of hair growth. But really, what he found was a way to improve cellular health is really what we ended up figuring out in all biological tissue, not just hair. And but since then, the late 60s, early 70s, there's been literally thousands of research studies on photobiomodulation. When it comes to a therapy or a therapeutic, laser therapy has more research than probably any other therapy by far. Like it has thousands upon thousands. And now there's a lot of ones on transcranial photobiomodulation for brain health, and brain health ranging from neurodevelopmental issues through neurodegeneration. There's more on the side of neurodegeneration, but there's starting to be a lot more studies on neurodevelopment, which is really cool. The changes are fantastic, and I can say now, like, I mean, I've been doing laser therapy for probably 8 years, and I've done thousands of hours of laser therapy, and had unbelievable changes that I never thought were possible, to be 100% honest. And the best part about it is there's really no side effects. Like every research study, unless it was set up really poorly with way too long, way too high doses, it's extremely, extremely safe. And I've never had anyone have a negative side effect from it, and so that's why it's really beneficial for the brain and also extremely safe. But so many studies from the last 70 years have reported that when neurons are under distress, photobiomodulation after being absorbed by photoacceptors found mainly among the mitochondria, for example, cytochrome C oxidase or complex 4 of our electron transport chain, works to stimulate the production of ATP, energy that drives many intrinsic neuronal functions. It also induces long-term cellular changes by activating expression of various functional and protective genes. Photobiomodulation makes neurons healthier by restoring the function and making them more resistant to distress. Photobiomodulation not only has a direct effect on neurons, but also has an impact on reducing gliosis and inflammation. So we know with kids that have autism is they have higher amounts of gliosis, they have higher amounts of neural inflammation, they have decreased mitochondrial function, and I'm going to show you diagrams on all this and stuff, but these are some really big underlying mechanisms that we know are going on in the brain with kids that have autism. And this therapy is something that has been shown over and over again to directly impact those underlying mechanisms. And that's why it's such a valuable tool. And I truly believe, and we'll find out if I'm right, but in the next like 15 years, I think it'll be one of the gold standard treatments for kids with autism, because it's something that the research so far has shown really positive impacts for. And also, more importantly, it's showed to address the underlying mechanisms that we know. And obviously, there's a lot of mechanisms we don't know, but there is a lot that we do know. And it's a therapeutic that has been shown to address that. So that's really cool. When neurons are healthy and functioning normally, there's no need to activate defense mechanisms. But when for example, the production of more energy and or expression of protective genes, photobiomodulation can still have an effect. So what that means simply is whether the neuron is healthy or it's unhealthy, it's going to have a beneficial effect. We call it the great regulator because it helps to regulate cell function. So it's not necessarily that we're upregulating or downregulating, we're creating better function, whether it's an unhealthy cell or it's a healthy cell, which is super important because we often worry about, well, what if we laser the wrong area of the brain, or what if we lasered the wrong area of the body? It's still going to have a beneficial effect. So you really can't mess up unless you do it for way, way, way too long, which if you knew anything about lasers, it's pretty hard to do. So in otherwise healthy neurons, there are many examples of photobiomodulation inducing either an increase or a decrease in functional activity. In the cortex, it's been suggested that photobiomodulation activates mechanisms that help focus attention or help restore overall balance and function and connectivity across any given system. particularly if it's dysfunctional. In patients suffering from either TBIs, Alzheimer's, both of which are abnormal functional connectivity between cortical areas, transcranial photobiomodulation helps correct these imbalances, restoring the connectivity between regions to normal levels. Um, and that's really cool because it shows that from everything from TBIs through neurodegenerative disorders,
Mhm.
it's been showing to have positive impacts for. So really any neurological issue. And this is something that I would highly recommend everyone read. It's a review of the literature on photobiomodulation specifically for autism, and it's from like 3 years ago. There's been a lot of research since then, but the Hamilton is a researcher from Harvard and has a lot of published research, especially in photobiomodulation. But it's simply saying that is the paper wasn't written by some random person. It was written by a very intelligent Harvard-based researcher that knows what they're doing and has written a lot of papers. And the really what this shows is the things that we know are going on in kids that have autism. For example, we have increased local interconnectivity or what's called short range connections, and we have decreased long range connections or connections between hemispheres and areas of the brain. So we get overconnectivity in certain areas, and that's what gives some of these kids that have autism these exceptional abilities. Like maybe they can play the piano, maybe they can count to 1,000 at the age of 2.5, or they can read really early on, or these different savant level skills. It's because these different areas of the brain are connected at such a high rate, but they don't have long range connections. So they have a harder time with their whole brain communicating with each other.
So they see the trees, not the forest.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. They see, especially it's a lot of times people talk about it being left brain versus right brain, but they will see that the fine detail that's more of a left brain skill versus right brain is going to be more your big picture, seeing the big picture. But either way, what happens is they have hyperconnectivity in certain areas of the brain, and they have a lack of connectivity in others, and they have a lack of connectivity between hemispheres, just overall. So those are what are called long range connections.
Okay.
Uh,
I put the link, the PubMed link for that paper into the chat so people can access it and find it.
yeah, and there's like another 60 research articles like at
Yeah.
the bottom of that are really good reads as well.
Okay.
We also know that they have a higher amount of mitochondrial dysfunction. And that is just simply for people who don't know what that is, simply that means that they don't produce energy efficiently. Let's just leave it at that. And they have increased amounts of oxidative stress, which damages their cells. They have an imbalance in synaptic transmission, increased brain size early on because they don't have appropriate pruning abilities. And so then they end up getting early cell death. They
Right.
also have gliosis and inflammation and decreased size and cell numbers overall. But on this side, and also altered microbiome, which a lot of people you probably know as well. Um, but on this side, it shows the positive effects that have been shown in the research over time from a brain-based perspective. And it's really interesting because, and there's a lot more benefits to photobiomodulation than what's on this paper. We're constantly learning and learning and learning, but like even stuff like activation of stem cells, which we didn't even know a few years ago. But increased mitochondrial function, decreased reactive oxygen species, increased ATP or energy, increased gene expression, restores cell homeostasis and growth factor levels, decreases inflammation and gliosis, restores balance of functional connectivity, and also it's been shown to improve the gut microbiome. So, like I know a lot of people are like, oh, that seems too good to be true, and for me it was too. Like when I first started using lasers and started seeing changes in these kids, I was like, well, I didn't know any of this at that point.
Mhm.
I was researching, digging into stuff. I met some people that were using lasers and said, yeah, the kids do great with it. I'm like, oh, awesome. Well, let's try it. And because it's safe, the safety profile is unreal. Like there's it's literally one of the safest things. It's like, well, what harm could it do type of thing. But the
Mhm.
results were awesome. And this paper came out in 2022, and I started using lasers in 2017 or 18. So this was 4 years before even a lot of this stuff was well known. And so when this started coming out, it all started clicking into place. Like, oh, we're increasing energy of the brain, we're decreasing inflammation, and now their brain has more resources and it can start that neural process. And so that's what we see over and over and over again is